No, I'm super excited that you all are here and that you're here through the education professions pathway, which means that to some extent, you're interested in education, right? Like you're interested in maybe, possibly, potentially being a teacher. And that's cool, and that excites me. And I'm glad that you're interested, especially since for the last 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 years, you have had a front row to teachers. And you've had a front row view of really, really good teaching. And you've had a front row view to some really bad teaching too, probably, right? Yeah, let's not name any names. No names, please, right? And so maybe you're still trying to figure out right now, is this the thing for me? Is this something that I want to do? Do I really want to go into education? You're still trying to figure out like what you're going to study in college. Are you going to college? Like what's that path going to look like, right? And so if that's kind of where you are right now, then I need to introduce you to someone. Because this someone I want to introduce you to is somebody who's going through that exact same thing. I'd like to introduce you to 18-year-old Matt. I'm a little concerned that somewhere in the room I heard, ow! So there's 18-year-old Matt. Great hairline, by the way, I missed that. Even tied his own tie for this picture. So he's got a lot going for him, you know? Let me tell you a little more about 18-year-old Matt. You know how there are different like cliques, different like social groups in the school? Matt, not at the top of the social groups. He was kind of like somewhere in the middle. Matt is an athlete, but not like a big football player, a big basketball player or anything. Like the smaller teams, you know, sort of the less recognized teams. Matt also works part-time at Burger King. For real, yeah. Flipping burgers, running the drive-thru, all of those things. Like he's got an awful lot going on. Busy life, sits down to take this picture, brave smile on his face. Poor kid. He has no idea the roller coaster he's going to go through over the next 20 years. So, see, Matt thought about a variety of different majors that he could go into. He thought business sounded interesting, you know, was interested in computer programming, you know, did some of that computer science stuff as a middle schooler, thought it was pretty cool. Thought about journalism as a profession too. Didn't even think about education. And so he picked journalism. And he decided he was going to be a journalism major. You all know what I mean by journalism, right? Like reporting and writing and newspapers and TV and you know all of that stuff. So Matt decides he's going to study journalism. And you know where he goes to school? Indiana State University. I'm looking for a little more reaction to that since we're right here, right? Did you know their mascot is the sycamores? We are trees, y'all. They're trees. Like the slogan is proud to be a tree. And so what does he do? He goes to classes. He goes to his journalism classes. He's trying to learn as much as he can about being a good journalist, works part-time jobs at newspapers, gets internships, does all the things, right? All the things that he's supposed to do to be a journalism major. Gets lots of work experience. It's looking really good. He was the editor of the campus newspaper called The Statesman. He was the editor of the campus magazine, news magazine called IQ. And so after all of that, 4 years later, Matt graduates from college, ready to go out into the real world. Have you all started to put yourselves in that place yet? Ready to go out into the real world? It's kind of a scary place to go, right? I mean, especially when we sort of know what life is like in high school and everything. So he graduates from college. And he goes and he tries to get a job in the journalism field, wants to work in newspapers, and gets hired into this one job. And it seems like it's perfect. So it's at a newspaper south of Indianapolis, and he's covering county government. Matt was a political science minor, in addition to being a journalism major, so it kind of made sense. He was trying to figure out what in the world he was going to write about. And so he thought, political science minor makes sense. I had to cover county government. You know what that also meant? It also meant that he had to cover county politics. Can you imagine what county politics are like? Some of the adults in here are like already rolling their eyes right along with me, right? And so it seems like it's perfect. Perfect ending to the story, right? He got a job in the field that he studied for. Everything's great, right? Nope, he hated it. Hated his job. Hated his dream job. And for about 2 months, he tried to convince himself that he was happy doing this job, reporting on county politics, talking to politicians who are trying to tell him stuff that wasn't true, trying to squeeze the truth out of them. Couldn't convince himself. So after 2 months, he started thinking, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I can't do this anymore. This is a question sometimes we have to ask ourselves, is if what I wanted to go into isn't what I love, what do I do now? Have any of you considered that? You go into college and you pick a major and you think, okay, I've got this figured out. And then if you go out into the real world, what if you were wrong? And so Matt had to start wrestling with that pretty quickly. And so what did he do? Well, still while he's working his journalism job, every so often, whenever he has a weekday that he doesn't have to work in his job, he goes with his wife to her job. So his wife, Matt's wife, Melanie, is a social studies teacher. 6th grade social studies teacher at Tri-West Middle School. And so Matt goes into class with her, sits at her desk. It's like, what else am I going to do on my day off? So goes and sits in her desk, grades some stuff for her every once in a while, but mostly he's just watching her, watching how she teaches. And she's good at it, right? Like she finds ways to make it interesting and engaging, and she pulls students' interest into things. But the thing that impresses Matt the most is the way that she talks with her students between class, after class, while they're sitting at their desk working on stuff. Like, he starts to realize pretty quickly that she is the teacher that everybody wants to have. And he's in awe. He's like, this is pretty cool. And all of a sudden, while he's sitting there in her classroom, he starts to go, why in the world did I get into journalism? How did this even happen? And he starts thinking back over the things that he actually loved about journalism, and it kept coming back to this one central thing. It was when he helped coach other writers on their writing, when he helped edit, when he helped coach, when he helped teach. And all of a sudden he's going, wait a second, I'm not a journalist, I'm a teacher. What was I thinking? And so, long story short, after a long journalism career of 3 months, he leaves his journalism job and goes back to school to become a teacher. And so around Christmas, he quits his job and he goes back and he's taken all of these education classes because he thinks, I want to be a teacher. I saw how my wife taught. I saw all of those cool moments. Like, this is it. This is what I want to do, you know? And so he takes a whole semester of education classes and gets close to the end of that spring semester. He's been out of his journalism job for like 5 months. And then there was a plot twist that sped up, because you think, oh, it's going to take me months. It might take me a year. It might take me 2 years before I'm ready to get back into this. Plot twist. There was a school nearby that needed a Spanish teacher. And that's what he was studying to be, was a Spanish teacher. And so he's like, well, what would it be like if I just learned on the job, Surely they won't hire me, though, Matt thinks. And so he goes in and he has an interview with the principal. And they have 2 candidates. And he's walking away from this interview and he's like, surely they won't hire me. Guess what happened? You figured it out, didn't you? They hired him. And so now he has these 2 conflicting emotions. Excitement because all of a sudden he gets to do this thing that he's excited about doing, and sheer terror because he doesn't know how in the world he's going to do it. Excitement and terror. I'm excited, I'm terrified. So he gets ready, and all of a sudden he heads off to his first class of students. Does this look about right? That's our school, she says. That's actually Turkey Run, by the way. Brand new teacher. And these students come walking in his classroom and he's going, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. No idea, right? So they're coming in, and he's kind of like doing his best to fake it until he makes it. Teaching a full load of Spanish classes. And so he gets into it, and he's teaching and teaching. Months go by, a couple of years go by, and all of a sudden he starts to develop this secret. It's a secret that the other teachers in his school don't know. It's a secret that his principal doesn't know. It's a secret that only the students know. Well, this sounds like a recipe for disaster, doesn't it? He has this secret, and the secret is that the students in his high school Spanish classes couldn't speak Spanish. I mean, that's bad, right? I mean, you start to think of it and you're like, babies can learn how to acquire a language without verb conjugation drills and big vocabulary lists. And he starts thinking about it and he's like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Because he'd been just teaching out of his textbooks. Did you guys know that teachers do that sometimes? Teach straight out of the textbook? Oh, there was the gasp. I love it. Everybody gasp. I know. And these teachers, they hand out worksheets. Double gasp, right? And workbook pages. And then they just assume that because, I heard a guy say this at some point, maybe it was today, just because they said it means that it was taught and it was learned.
Oh, no.
I know, right? But he's going, this isn't working. Something about this isn't working. And so what does he do? He just starts trying stuff. This guy right here just starts trying stuff, and some of it works, and some of it doesn't. Some of it's terrible. And so he starts bringing in technology wherever he can. He starts incorporating creativity. There's like storytelling and conversational Spanish and stuff, and some of it flops, but some of it's great. And so he starts throwing little things out that didn't work and keeping all the things that do work until eventually his students start speaking Spanish. He's actually out in the hallway, sometimes in the cafeteria on the lunch line, and he starts hearing it. He's like, something finally is working. So that journey from a journalist sitting in his wife's classroom to finally starting to figure out a way to help students learn Spanish. I'm going to tell you another secret, okay? That teacher that I was talking about, that teacher was me. I've trained you guys so well. So now, here that I am, I've been teaching for more than 10 years. Just got out of the classroom recently. And it's been a journey, you know. In 2014, I won the WTHI Golden Apple Award for teaching, which was like a highlight of my teaching career. I've written 6 books, and I get to speak to thousands of teachers around the United States and sometimes beyond the United States about effective teaching. And I was just recently on the Dr. Phil show talking about education. That was a wild experience. We can talk about that later. But after all of that huge journey that leads me to right now, it makes me think back. It makes me think back to you guys. And to think, I remember when I was, you know, in my own version of this, where I was sitting in an auditorium trying to figure out if this is the path that I want my career to go. And there are things that I wish people would have told me about teaching. And really, bigger picture, about life and about becoming an adult. And so what I decided to do was to whittle that list down to 10. And I'm going to share 10 of those things with you today. So I'm going to move kind of quickly through them. Not like crazy quick, but like I'm going to move kind of quickly through them. And the nice thing about these 10 is that you don't have to be a teacher to get something out of this, okay? So what I also did was I got some help. So I asked 108,000 of my closest friends. I have this email newsletter for teachers that has 108,000 people subscribed to it. And so one day I hit send and I said, hey, I get to talk to all of these high school students who think that they might want to be teachers. What would you tell aspiring teachers? And so 142 of them responded. That's like a little more than 1%. That's not a whole lot, but hey, at least it's something. And you know what? The responses were so good that I've included them in my slides here. So I want to share with you those top 10 things. And I also want to invite the educators in the room, the adult educators. If you have been in education at any point in your life, I know there's a handful of us in here, I want you to think and hold in the back of your mind something that you want to tell all of them that you wish someone had told you. I'm going to give you an opportunity to share that too. All right? You all ready for the 10? You ready for this? That was not very convincing. That's a little better. Okay. If you want to get the 10, actually if you want to get access to my slides later, if you've got your phone and you want to refer back to my slides later, just take a picture of the slide real quick if you want to. ditch.link/younger-me. I promise that that's a real thing. If you type that in, you'll be able to get it. You know what else is funny? If you've got your phone out, will you keep it out for just a second? It's the first time a teacher ever told you to do that, right? Keep your phone out for just a second. Now, if you took a picture, would you kind of like hold your phone up and show us how you took that picture? Like, how are you holding it? Hold it up, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. Very good. Now, I want you to show us if adults my age were going to take this picture, how would they hold their phones? Like that, right? It's like a generation-defining thing. This is you, this is me. Kids, boomers. Right? All right, one more link, then you can put your phones away. This is one if you want it. If you really do think you'd like to get into education and you'd like to get in on my email newsletter where I talk about teaching on a regular basis, you can go to ditch.link/join and sign up for that same email newsletter if you want to. Okay, let's get into this, shall we? Number 1. Oh no, I lost my number 1 slide. I think I turned it into this. Okay, pretend that number 1 says this. Number 1 says, teachers are influencers. Okay? Pretend that that's what that says up here. Teachers are influencers. Have you ever thought of it that way? So let's turn it away from teachers for a second and let's turn to influencers. Social media influencers. You all have seen these people, right? Have you ever thought about what it would be like to be one of these social media influencers? I know you have. Don't lie to me if you say that you haven't. Like, you've probably considered what it would be like to be, a professional TikToker or whatever you all call those people. But think about it. What do? Through their social media, they influence people's decisions. That's why we call them influencers. They're well known. So they have a following to the point that people recognize who they are, right? And sometimes when they go out in public, people recognize them. Hey, aren't you so-and-so? And they get stopped and they have to take selfies and they have to sign stuff, right? And think about it. Some people will remember their names for the rest of their lives. I got news for you. Teachers were the original influencers. Do you think about that? Think about the teachers that you know and respect and admire. They influence your decisions. They're well known in the school. You might recognize them in public. Have you ever gone out to the grocery store and you see your teacher there? And first of all, it's really weird, isn't it? Right? You see your teachers in real life and you're like, kind of like that, right? But think about this too. You will remember their names for the rest of your lives. Those influential teachers, right? I mean, the adults can attest to this. You probably think back. Would the adults in the room, would you raise your hand if you can remember the names of influential teachers from your earlier, when you were a student? There you go. Exactly. So here's what I'd like you to do for just a second. Find somebody near you. Yes, I'm going to make you talk. Yes, you have to talk. Sorry. Find somebody near you and tell them what you think makes a teacher influential. What makes a teacher influential? You have 1 minute, ready, set, go. 10 seconds. That wasn't really a full minute. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Look at you, you're better than the teachers are. All I had to do is just count down. I was like ready to do, if you can hear my voice, clap once. I have you all trained so nicely. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to hear from a few of you, which means that you're going to talk into this thing right here. But I actually have rewards for you if you want to share something. Some of you have already gotten some of my rewards. I have a pocket full of trash can buttons, just like my t-shirt. I'll explain that in a little bit. But so if you want to get a trash can, but mostly if you have something to say about what makes an influential teacher, would you raise your hand? And I'm going to come right on down here, and you're going to be first. It pays to sit next to the stage. Okay, what makes an influential teacher?
Some of their lessons that they teach can be like very influential towards kids.
Yes, 100%. Trash can. There you go. Yes, ma'am.
Not assigning homework to students who have jobs or like have to take care of their siblings after school.
I just heard that. Like understanding the balance that it takes, right? Yes, ma'am.
A teacher that actually cares about what they're teaching. So they're enthusiastic. It makes you enthusiastic.
Oh, enthusiasm and passion. I like it. Coming down here. You're in the middle and I'm actually coming over here. Are you kind of freaked out about this? Not as freaked out as she is. Go ahead.
A teacher that can like help you relate to like the story or like what they're teaching.
Yeah, exactly. Relating it to your life, relating to your interests. Sorry about all of this. All right, let's do one more right here.
Someone who individualizes education.
Ooh, individualizes, like kind of personalizes it to the students, right? Don't worry, we'll do this again. I still have here, listen. You hear that? I've still got more buttons, it's okay. But if you think about it, if you ask any teacher why they got into education, they almost all say the same thing: to make a difference. That's why they got into it, right? Because they wanted that influence. And it's a gift. And you all get that opportunity if you decide you want to go into education. So that's number one. I wanted to share what Heather from Arizona says. She says, getting to shape the minds of the younger generation is something that should be celebrated, admired, and strived for. Believe in your students and never let them forget their why. And I heard some of you talking about that, right? So number one is teachers are influencers. Let's go to number two. Oh, there it is. It was just out of order. See, I promised it was there. Number two, your teaching should reflect you. See, I learned this one really early on. In fact, we talked about this, didn't we? I had this way of teaching that ran right through the textbook, right through the workbooks, right through the worksheets. It's actually the reason that I have a trash can on my shirt. My first book that I wrote was called Ditch That Textbook. Can I get an amen for that? Ditch that textbook, right? Yeah. It's because as a Spanish teacher, I started to realize that that idea of marching chapter by chapter through the textbook wasn't helping my students speak Spanish. And so we tried other things that were more effective until eventually I was like, why in the world do I still have these things? And so for me, that's what it was about. It was like, who do I want to be as a teacher? And if you go into education, you decide that you want to be a teacher, you're going to have to ask that same question of yourself. And even if you don't go in to teaching, you get to ask that same question as well. Who am I, and how do I show up in my work? How does my personality show up in my work? For me, that was storytelling, technology, creativity, bringing all of that stuff into my lessons. And so what it really means is you need to find your teacher voice. And I'll tell you what, this is something that whenever I get a chance to teach, I'm still trying to figure out. You heard this morning about how teachers are never really a finished product, and I'm still trying to figure it out too. And if you see any of your teachers that you think have it figured out, guess what? They're still trying to figure out their voice too. So figure out what that voice is, and whatever it is that you do, how do you bring yourself to it, right? There's a teaching book that I really like called, you ready for this? This is kind of a wacky name, so brace yourself for it. The book is called Teach Like a Pirate. Real book, I promise. Teach Like a Pirate, written by a guy named Dave Burgess. And it's like talking about these like outlandish, like memorable ways that you can teach to try to connect with your students. And one of the things that he said in this book was, he said, when my students graduate from high school, I don't want them to just know about my content. I want them to know me. I want them to know about me. I want to leave a little bit of myself with those students. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's important. No matter what it is that we do, no matter what field we go into, we have to figure out, how do I show up? How am I sort of like unique in all of this? Because people want to be around people who are passionate. Who talked about this? Somebody right down here. So, yes, that's right. See, it's like you were reading my notes. See? They want to be around people who are passionate. Jenna from California, or Gina, says, it's okay if your teaching style doesn't match your colleagues. Again, take this out to any sort of profession, even if it's not teaching. Everyone has to find their own way to be themselves in the classroom and keep it fun. You know, there's that saying that if you find something that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. You ever heard that before? Be yourself, keep it fun. If you can find ways to do that in your work, that's huge. Number 3 is the importance of relationships. Because relationships are crucial. I mean, just think back to your own teachers that you have right now, or your own teachers that you've had in high school or middle school or elementary school, and think about the ones where you knew that they cared about you. Sometimes they were firm on you, sometimes they were tough with you, but they cared. You know the ones, don't you? You know the ones where you really matter to them. So if you ask any teacher about relationships, there's this saying, there's this quote that kind of gets them like, it's a little controversial with some teachers. And so I want to share it with you and see what you think. So here's what it is. Kids don't learn from people they don't like. Interesting, right? If you think that's true, I want you to say yes out loud. And if you don't think it's true, I want you to say no out loud. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Wow. So you start to talk to teachers and they're like, yeah, but if they don't like me, they've still got to learn the content. They're still going to remember something. But you talk to enough teachers and you talk to enough students and you start to realize there's something to this, right? This quote was pulled right out of this fantastic TED Talk by Rita Pearson called Every Kid Deserves a Champion. Let's watch a little clip from it.
But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like.
There it is.
She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was.
Needless to say, it was. So think about that. And you can apply, again, if you're going into teaching or if you're not, this is something you can apply to anything, right? Kids don't learn from people they don't like. Coworkers don't get along with people that they don't like. There's something to be taken out of all of that, right? But see, here's the thing with relationships too, is that you got to know what type of relationship to have. Like for instance, as teachers, you can't just be the students' friends. You can't just be friends with them the same way that you are with your adult friends, because there's some boundaries, right? In fact, I learned sort of an important lesson about this from somebody in this room. It was this. You don't have to be their friend. In fact, don't be their friend, but you can You can be friendly. When I was writing my first book, Ditch That Textbook, this is advice that I got from somebody when it was in the final revisions, when it was in the final parts of the book. You know who it was that gave me that advice, right? I don't know if he remembers this or not. Yeah, you do. I figured you probably did. It was Rick. So it's that idea that, yeah, there are some of those qualities that you can bring to teaching where you're like a friend. But you probably know some of the best teachers are the ones who are friendly, but they have expectations, but they push you, right? Those are the ones that make a difference in your life. Here's what Heather had to say about that. She said, enjoy the students as human beings. Show up to their activities. Does that matter, showing up to activities? Exactly. Show interest in their lives. Take time in class to get to know them. Don't just focus on the content. They will remember, and so will you. And as the year goes on, they will reveal more about themselves voluntarily because they know you care. Is Heather speaking the truth? Yes. Yeah. Do you wish that I could show this slide to all of your teachers? Yes. Okay. So, if that's the case, let me give you a challenge. If you become a teacher, remember, be that teacher. Okay? Next, when it comes to these relationships, there are four, especially in teaching, there are 4 crucial relationships that you need to cultivate. And you might try to think of like who's going to be on this list. That's probably the principal, it's probably the athletic director, and it's probably the superintendent and the school board. Like all of those important people, right? Nope. Secretary, custodian, librarian, transportation director. Think about that for a second. Think about your own school. Think about the secretary. Does the secretary know everything that's going on in that school? Yes. Right, exactly. Does the secretary hold power? Yes. Does the secretary strike fear in the hearts of people sometimes? Yes. Custodian. They have all the keys. Okay? They can get you anywhere. The librarian. I got to tell you, I feel like a good librarian is the super glue that holds a school together. And if you've got somebody in your school that can be a good matchmaker between students and a good book, you've got something good. And then the transportation director, you got to get places. They're going to help you get there, right? All right. Here's what Sonia said about relationships. She said, get to know the administrative assistants and the custodians in your building by name and appreciate them for what they do. Because these people literally keep the school running and can make your daily life so much easier from day one. Guess what? This goes for you as students too, right? Have you ever gotten on the wrong side of the school secretary before? No. Don't. Don't. It's probably terrifying. I haven't either. Let's keep moving. Let's go to number 4. Learn the science of learning. You heard some of this morning too. That you see, it's not just when you get into a class as a teacher, you don't just show up and say, oh, I'm going to try this thing and I hope it works. Or, oh, I'll just do it the way that other teachers have done it. There's no prescripted way. A lot of times there's no prescripted way that you just have to do it. But see, the reality is that scientists and researchers have been studying how humans learn for more than a century. For centuries, probably, depending on how you define research. And so they've been studying it for all this time, and they have learned some really valuable stuff. Here's the problem. Sometimes teachers forget, or sometimes they didn't learn it, or sometimes they don't apply it. So if you decide to get into teaching, I want you to pay attention to what the research says works about teaching. And if you don't get into teaching and you continue studying, guess what? This stuff is going to help you too. Let me show you a few of my favorites. Number 1, retrieval. There is tons of research that talks about how your studying and learning time is more effective if you recall information out of your brain instead of cramming it into your brain. Think about how you study for a quiz or a test. What do? Did you just say I don't? And then she covers her mouth up. I don't. But if you do study for a test, what do? Grab your textbook, grab your notes, and what do? Reread them, go back over it. Science tells us this is a less than effective approach for creating long-term memory. Everybody gasp again, please. I know. Right? I heard you. And so what's a better approach? Recalling it out of your brain, putting the notes away and doing a brain dump on a piece of paper or orally or with a partner or whatever. That's what research tells us forms long-term memory. Here's another one, interleaving. It's like the shuffle button on Spotify. That if you continue to study the same subject and then you put that subject away and then you study a different subject and then put it away, your brain doesn't store it in long-term memory as effectively as if you mix things together. Also with your flashcards, the shuffle button, if you all use Quizlet, how many of you use Quizlet? Look at the hands, good. I want to give you an easy button to better learning. The shuffle button. Shuffling your flashcards is like an easy button to better learning. Use the shuffle button. 2 more, timely feedback. If you do something and you turn it in to a teacher and it takes them days to get it back, takes you days to get it back, the feedback isn't taken in and isn't as effective as if you get it in a more timely way. So if you're going to become a teacher, remember that A, the faster students can get that feedback, the better off they are, and B, you all know what I mean by feedback, right? It's like, little notes or suggestions or ways you can do something different or corrections or whatever. And also remember that there are different ways to do corrections than writing notes in the margin of a piece of paper. Am I right? Let's go to number 4, reflection. This is something that I think has a huge, huge impact. I don't just think it has a huge impact. The research tells us, but it doesn't happen very much. It's that idea that once you've learned something, you need to take time to think about how it fits with everything else. Ask yourself questions like, what do I still not totally understand about this? What other questions do I have about it? How does this fit with other things that I've learned? How does this change how I see the world? If you take just a little bit of time after learning, this is something that helps it stick, but also helps you to apply it to other things. Those are just 4 of my favorites. But if you go into teaching, I want you to remember, research tells us a lot about how humans learn. And even if you don't, you can still use this stuff as you study. Tracy says, know what is best practice for your kids and then do it. That's pretty direct. The curriculum may change every year, but you know what your kids need. Have you ever noticed those teachers that it's like, it feels like they know you and what you're looking for and what you need, and sometimes they do things a little differently than everybody else, but it works? It's because they know from that experience. Let's keep moving. Let's go to number 5. Guess what? You don't have all the answers. There's another gasp. I love it. That's right. Yeah. Should I ask him to gasp again? Yeah, okay. Everybody gasp. You don't have all the answers. And you know what? For young teachers, I know this because this was me. For young teachers, they have a tendency to equate their value with being right and knowing everything. Here's the thing. Have you all ever been in a class with a teacher where you know that they don't know something, but they won't admit it? Yes. Oh, that was pretty resounding, right? You all know, right? And so what do? They stand their ground, they dig in their heels, and they say, but, and they try to explain it away, and you all are like, we know. Let me ask you the other side of that coin. Have you ever seen teachers where they admit that they don't know, and then we try to figure it out together? Yes. Okay, so does it make a huge difference when they admit that they don't know and they try to figure it out with you? Yes. Makes all the difference in the world, right? See, getting at 2 things about this. One is that getting it right does eventually matter. But you don't have to know everything. And then secondly, the idea that you're communicating to other people that you're a learner too. Because really, you heard some of this morning, like teachers are still learners. We're still trying to figure it out. There's still a lot that we're trying to learn about our content, learn about how we teach and everything. And the more that we stop trying to fool people that we know all of the answers, the better off we are in the end. Am I right? Am I right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's what Helen has to say about that. She says, it's okay to not know the answer to every question that asked. That's human. Now, be the teacher and turn it back to them with a response like, oh, look, we just talked about this. This is a great question, and I don't know the answer. While I think it might be, why don't we research it together? Will a week be long enough to see what we come up with? You ever heard a teacher say that before? Maybe not a week, but either way, I really like her approach to that. Here's number 6. Protect yourself. So here's a reality I've got to tell you all. If you decide to go into teaching, it's that people try to take advantage of teachers. You may not realize it. You may not see it, but it's happening in the background. People try to take advantage of teachers. You know why? It's because teachers have a big heart. Because teachers in their soul want to help people, and a lot of times they will do whatever it takes to help them, even if it's to their own personal detriment. Have you ever seen a teacher still in their classroom, still working hours after school was over? Do you know how much extra they get paid for those extra hours? $0. $0. Who are they in there doing it for? Yeah, exactly. Now here's the thing. It's that idea of do it for the kids. Now, if that teacher chose on their own that they wanted to stay those extra 2 hours and do it for the kids, that's fine. Here's the thing you got to be careful of. Sometimes people will weaponize the words, do it for the kids. This isn't as happy of a message, but this is something you got to be aware of. Do it for the kids. Do these extra hours. Do this extra stuff. Do this stuff that's outside of your contract because of the kids. And you got to protect yourself from that. Do you realize, I don't have the stats exactly with me, but do you realize that there is a huge number of teachers that go into teaching, and it's the same thing that we were talking about earlier. I want to make a difference. They go into teaching, and 5 years later, lots of them, not in the classroom anymore. You know what it is a lot of times? It's burnout. Burnout. And so I want you to, as best as you can, protect yourself from burnout. Because at some point, you got to realize, you know what, these papers, they're going to be here tomorrow. I need to go home. Or, I'm not quite myself right now. I need to step away from this. Sometimes your teachers' union is a really good place to go to try to protect yourself from that. So I just want to throw all of that out there that you really do need to protect yourself. Like Stephen says here, you must take care of yourself. You do this mentally. He's got 3 of them. Mentally, by not working around the clock for the kids. There it is again. This will help with the issue of future burnout. You will do this physically by not ignoring doctor's visits, proper nutrition, and exercise. This is a big one. And then finally, you do this financially. This is something that you don't hear a lot going into the education profession. By investing with a 403 or some other long-term investment. I know that's all probably a bunch of gobbledygook and jargon to you at this point in your life. But investing financially for the future is huge. In addition to the basic retirement savings that you have, it's imperative that you start this with your first paycheck. It's tough to get by on a teacher's salary, but this is stuff that you'll want to keep in mind. So protect yourself. We're getting closer. See, the nice thing about having a numbered list of 10 is you have an idea of how much longer you have to sit there, right? Okay. Let's go to number 7. There's that quote. You heard something about this earlier, but he didn't actually show it, so I'm going to show it. Do the best you can until you know better. Do y'all know how this one finishes? It goes, do the best you can until you know better, and then when you know better, there it is. That's right, do better. There's Dr. Maya Angelou's quote. See, I think sometimes we think that we've got to have it all figured out before we get into something. And I got to tell you, my path in education was quite the opposite. Do you remember how much I had things figured out when I stepped into that very first classroom with all those students? Didn't have it figured out, right? Remember, I looked at that first class of students and I was like, what in the world am I doing? So here's another example. I started seeing that my students in my Spanish classes were just not getting it. And so I heard about this new way of teaching Spanish that I thought was really, really cool. It was conversational. It was this method called TPRS, Teaching Proficiency Through Reading and Storytelling. And I thought it sounded cool. So I went to a seminar on it. Got to meet the founder of that type of teaching, Blaine Ray. Sat in a workshop with him for 3 days and learned this new way of teaching. And so I come back in the classroom and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to teach through conversation and storytelling. But it terrified me, scared me to death, because I didn't know how to do it. But I didn't wait until I knew how to do it, I just started doing it. And what happened was, as I was doing this storytelling, as I was being more conversational, as I was asking my students questions, I started to develop this little nervous mannerism. I didn't even realize I was doing it. Guess who realized that I was doing it? My students. So when I was teaching, it sounded something like this. You ready? I'm going to talk in Spanish for a second. Y'all ready for this? Clase. Hay un chico. Oh. Y clase. El chico es José. Ah. Y clase. José es alto. Clase. José no es bajo. Did you hear a word that I kept saying over and over and over again? What was it? Clase, exactly. I said it over and over and over. I didn't even realize I was doing it. You know when I finally did realize? Graduation day. One of my students was the valedictorian. Some of you see where this is going. And I found out that they were counting the number of times that I said clase. And I didn't realize it until he got up on the stage in his valedictorian speech and he said, like that one day when Mr. Miller said clase 42 times. 42, they counted. It's because I was nervous because I didn't know what in the world I was doing. But eventually I figured it out, and eventually it was huge, right? Just like what Larissa says. She says, don't be afraid to try something new, or just do it scared. Just try it scared. It's okay. That's basically what I did. So she did this. She said going from being a teacher in the regular classroom to a virtual environment in 2015 was scary. But I knew I had to try it for my family. I took the risk, it worked out. I've been teaching virtually for 9 years, and it has been a blessing. Sometimes you got to try things when you're not ready for it. 3 more. Adults, do you remember what I told you earlier? What I wanted you to keep in the back of your mind? If you have something that you want to add to this, that you want to leave with these guys, it's going to come right after 9, so be ready, okay? I've been painting a little bit of a rosy picture about teaching. But we got to come back to this on number 8. Teaching is hard. I know, but it really is. It is hard. I mean, if you think about it, the teachers that you see on a day-to-day basis, it's thankless work. There are long days. You teach and you teach and you teach, and then you're given 4 minutes to go to the bathroom. Do you ever think about that with teachers? They get 4 minutes and during passing periods, at least in the high school, to go to the bathroom. Yeah, I know. It's tough. And obviously teaching is not known for the pay. But it's rewarding. And it's worth it, right? And as a teacher, you're going to care about it a lot more than your students do. But that's okay. It is a rewarding profession, even though it's hard. Like Tracy says, she says, I wish I had known to prepare my heart. I wish I'd known how much so many of my students would come to mean to me and how hard it would be to say goodbye to them. No college course in education teaches you this. Prepare it to expand beyond what you thought was capable. Prepare to share tears of both joy and sorrow with and for your students. It will change you, and it will do that for the better. It's hard, but it's worth it. And then number 9, I want you to find your community. This is like life advice, but it's definitely teaching advice. And this was huge for me. See, when I started teaching, my first teaching job was at North Vermilion. Do we have North Vermilion folks in there? Oh, yes. Okay. All right. Excellent. So teaching Spanish at North Vermilion. Go Falcons. Now my Park Heritage people are like, did he really just say go Falcons? Anyway, so teaching at North Vermilion, I was the entire world languages department. I was the only Spanish teacher. How many of you are in a school where there is like one foreign language teacher and that's it? All right. It's tough. I was out there by myself. And so I had to go find my community because trying to do this work by yourself is hard. Trying to study and get by in school by yourself is hard. And so there's lots of different directions you can look. For instance, if you get into teaching, you're going to have a teacher next door to you. And to me, I never had a Spanish teacher next door to me, but those teachers were vital to me. I had a geometry teacher right across the hall from me at North Vermilion. I talked to her about all sorts of stuff. She taught math, I taught Spanish, but she was my person. And she was just right there, right across the hall from me. If you teach in a team with other people that teach what you do, they are your lifeblood. Here's the thing though, not all of them will see things the way that you do. So you lean on them as much as you can. Find teacher conferences. They exist. Conferences for teachers. And again, even if you don't go into education, find them, learn, and find your people. And then, brace yourself. You ready for this? Teachers use social media. Gasp. I know. And believe it or not, I love that I've trained you guys to do this. This is fantastic. And believe it or not, teachers use social media to actually get better at what they do, to get better at teaching. So you've got teachers that share teaching ideas, that share the struggles. And so sometimes if you don't have that face-to-face community, you can find it. I mean, I know you probably think that TikTok is all about dances and dogs and stuff like that, right? Here comes another gasp. You ready? There are teachers that share teaching ideas on TikTok. I know, believe it or not. Go look for it, they exist. Elizabeth Warner says, find your tribe, I love this, locate the happy and efficient teachers around you and follow their lead. This is good advice for any field that you get into. The happy and efficient teachers, the ones that love what they're doing and have found good ways to do it. Find a colleague who will help you. Count your worst day as a stepping stone in your growth journey. I love that. All right, it's time for the adults in the room. I'd love to hear some other things that you could add to this conversation. So I'm going to hop off this stage right here. Some of you have been thinking about this. This is a big moment, right? We've got lots of folks here in this room that are like sponges. Okay, so I need a brave adult to slip their hand up and impart some wisdom on the future generations. Yes, ma'am.
I would say don't settle. Don't settle in relationships. Don't settle job-wise. Just don't settle.
Yes.
And when you know that you need to do better, just like Maya Angelo, do better.
Yes, exactly. That's great. Does she deserve a trash can?
Oh, I do.
There you go. All right. Oh, yes, she's putting it on her backpack. Awesome. Where? Delisa! I'm coming for you, Delisa. I got my eyes on you.
I would say go above and beyond. Like you said, at your comfort level, right?
Yes.
But always consider out of the box thinking.
Yes.
And it's okay. You have permission, as my principal says,
Yes.
you have permission to do what's best for kids,
Yes.
to think outside the box, to be creative, and always go above and beyond.
Yes. Oh, that's good. That's trash can worthy right there. That's excellent. Anybody else? This is your big opportunity. You all can't, they don't get voluntold, they have to volunteer. Going once, going twice. All right. Oh, did I walk right by you? You got something? I want to hear it.
Their eyeballs stared me down.
They're influencing you.
They did.
Yes.
I would say figure out how to inspire learning in all and do it unapologetically.
Yes.
I can't even get the word out.
That's okay. I get it.
Unapologetically.
Yes. Inspire learning and all and do it unapologetically. There you go. I love that. That's great. That's great. Oh, do we have another one? Oh, you got one? All right. Just say it loud. Use your teacher voice. Unless I get to you with the microphone first.
You all want to be teachers, I say find your age group.
Oh, yeah.
Marry that age group, but also be open. I say marry.
Not marry like that.
Not like that.
No.
I mean, but find
Yeah.
the group of students that you want to teach. but also be open, because while you may be called to teach preschool or teach kindergarten, you also may be called to teach middle school.
Yeah.
You never know until you try. So teaching, you all may be called to teach, but be open.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great. There's your trash can. Anybody else before I get back on that stage? So let me just echo what you were saying there. To some extent, teaching is about teaching humans no matter the age, right? It's about loving them and trying to pass things along to them that are going to help them out. We're going real quick to the big finish here. This is number 10. This is my last one. I'm going to get a little sappy here, okay? Because we need you. We need you. If you're going to get into education, if you want to get into education, I want you to do it because you want to. But by golly, do we need you? Because the stakes are huge, right? Like, really, it has to do with the future. You all are helping to prepare the future. And you're like, well, how do I even prepare the future? You just show up and you be a caring teacher. And you try to take care of what your students need, and that's going to do it. But we're going to need good, solid educators, and people are going to need a really good education in this coming future. There's going to be lots of big decisions to be made. There's going to be a lot of things that happen in this world, and we need educated humans. We need you. Now, I want to leave you with these last two quotes. This one right here comes from my dear friend, Julie Daniel Davis. She was a teacher, and now she teaches teachers in Tennessee. And if you go into education, you're going to find people like Julie. You know, these veteran teachers. You know, these teachers, you know some of these veteran teachers, like, they've been through some things, right? Like, they've seen a lot. But you're going to mean a lot to them. You know why? Because they're going to see themselves in you. And they will run through brick walls for you. So find them, find those people, and let them support you in your journey. Folks just like Julie, and you can hear it like ooze out of her words as she says it. She says, "Thank you for choosing this profession. It will feel thankless and overwhelming at times. You'll be frustrated with things out of your control. You'll also ask yourself why you chose this path. But there will be moments where you see your part in the learning path of a student that struggles. Maybe you've been part of one of those. Or you'll find moments for life lessons in the midst of the school day that will matter to some students years from now, influencers. You'll be someone's favorite teacher ever. You'll learn from them and through them. You'll be challenged and you'll grow. You'll have regrets, but there will be days where you will feel like you conquered the world." I'm trying not to choke up while I read this. "You are about to embark on a beautiful, messy, complicated world of personalities and hormones and teaching self-regulation to young minds, all while making sure your curricular learning is happening. And you know what? You are equipped to do it. Welcome. Now go find your teacher that you admire and ask them to be your mentor and your sounding board." And to wrap this up, one more. This was the one that probably had the most impact on me. Another quote, 2 words. Ready? Your hope. This is a teacher in Spain. I said, "What do you want me to tell the kids today?" She said, "Your hope. You are our hope. Whether you go into education or not." See, all of us adults are looking at you all right now, and all we see is hope. You guys give us hope. So thank you for giving us hope. Thank you for what you're going to do. You are the hope. Thank you. Thank you.